name's Raquan Williams. I'm here to tour around this museum, the National Capital Radio Television Museum. So can you tell me some of the history behind this museum?
Sure. We've been here for about 12 years now. We started as a group of collectors, people who like to collect old radios, and they all had big collections. They wanted to put the collections out somewhere people could see them. So we went to a bunch of places, tried to find a place that was cheap enough to work in because we didn't have a lot of money. And the city of Bowie had renovated this 1906 building, farmhouse, to be a museum, but they had no one to be in it. So our museum got in touch with them, and we got to move in here, and that's about 12 years ago.
Interesting. Can you tour me around, show me?
Sure. I'll take a walk upstairs.
From now in the past.
Right. These are all the oldest radios we have here now. These are all from the 1920s. When radio first became something you listened to for entertainment, you wanted to listen to music or sports or what have you, this is the kind of thing you would have listened to it on. They're very expensive. Even the least expensive ones here cost about $150 back in 1920. So in today's money, with all the batteries and all the other parts, it would cost about $3,000 in today's money. And it's just an AM radio. And there weren't a lot of stations back then. There were only a handful of stations to listen to. But even though it was real expensive, people did it because it was brand new technology. No one ever had a box you could flip a switch on and hear music or sports or whatever was going on before. You had to read a newspaper or listen to a record or something like that before. Here you can listen to whatever you want, all over the world sometimes.
So what do we have on this side?
These are more inexpensive radios. These, like I said, were very expensive. This is called a Crystal Radio. Crystal Radio cost $25 back at the same time, so this would be much less expensive. You wouldn't get to hear as many stations, but if you didn't have the kind of money to spend on one of those radios, you can get one of these. And some of them were really inexpensive. This one was only $1, and you built it inside a Quaker Oats can. And we do the same thing. You hook up an antenna to it and some earphones, and you can listen to the radio with just this. No battery, no plug or anything.
Wow. So what do we have right here?
This is one of the tube type radios, like the ones on the wall over there. And you have to tune it by adjusting all of these knobs to get the stations to come on and play through a speaker like that. So this is the kind of thing that would have cost several $100s back in the 1920s. It doesn't sound very good, but back then that was high definition. Much better than what you would have with the Crystal radios, which couldn't even work a speaker. This was the only thing that could work a speaker.
So this is kind of like the starting to how people really started to like listen to radios and stuff back then.
Exactly, yeah, this is when people first got excited about it. Even though it was real expensive, they were still excited about doing it because it was brand new technology. It never existed before.
Okay, so we'll talk about it.
These are the batteries that the thing ran on. These all ran on batteries. You didn't plug them in. This is a 45-volt battery. And you would have taken 3 of these to get 135 volts for the radio. And you also would have used a car battery, a 6-volt car battery. So these were not only expensive, but they were very complicated to operate. You'd have all these parts, all these batteries, you had to fiddle with all these knobs to get the stations to come in. But people still like doing that because they like the new technology.
Let's check those.
Now this is a little bit later on when the radios got more attractive. They look more like furniture. They're like the kind of thing you want to have in your house. You know, even like this one here, which looks like a piano. It has the radio built into the piano case, and it has a phonograph in the back, record player in the back. So it was a whole home entertainment center that was shaped like a piano. So you can put that in your house and look like a piece of furniture and not like the things out there which are very technical. So this is when radio became more commonplace in the home as an appliance and not just a piece of new technology.
So
These are just, in this room are a whole bunch of different examples of radios from this era. You know, there are all kinds of different styles, shapes. Some of them were homemade. This one was made from a kit. You could buy a kit radio and put it together yourself. Some of them were manufactured by radio companies. There are lots of companies out there making radios. So everything in this room is a bunch of different examples of stuff from the late 1920s when radio was really starting to become really popular.
So this was like the transitional period, like when radios was getting more to the point of advanced, being more advanced and stuff like that.
Being more advanced and being more attractive to the average person. You know, when back these kind of radios out there took a lot of work, a lot of trouble. Only people who were into technology like those. This is for housewives, families, anybody who just wanted to have one at home and listen to it. So they became much more technologically advanced. They became a little more expensive, but they look better, like things you want to have sitting in your living room as a piece of furniture. So it's one transition. The other transitions in this room. This is a transition to being a real home appliance. This is where radios got much less expensive. There's some over here that are very small, inexpensive plastic radios. You know, they're no longer great big heavy wooden things that are expensive. Some of them were still sort of expensive. This one here is made out of glass and chrome. That's mirrored glass and chrome metal on that. So there are all kinds of different designs, all kinds of different price ranges, but you could buy very inexpensive radios now. You can have 2 or 3 radios at home. This is the period when radio was at its absolute peak of popularity, of the type of things you could buy. You could have radios that were built into clocks. You had radios that were built into tables. You had a car radio. The earliest car radios were these boxes you bought and you put them inside your car. They'd mount a tuning knob and a volume control on your dashboard. So the beginning of having radio everywhere, in your furniture, in your car, in every room of the house. This is the beginning of that era. Because right after this, not long after this, television came along. When television came along, people didn't care about radio much anymore, because television was the new thing, and that's what we're going to see when we get downstairs. But this is when radio was absolute peak. Late 1930s, right before World War II started, is when radio was absolutely at its peak.
Alright, so now we're now gonna make our next part, which is when we go downstairs.
But they're still just AM radios. Still plugged into the wall, built-in antennas. They were about as nice as they could be, but people at this point, television has started coming along. So at this point, radio is no longer the main thing in the house. It was something you had in the kitchen or in in the garage, something to listen to while you're doing work or what have you. Those are FM radios there.
Oh, I heard of those.
Yeah, FM radio is sort of a modern radio. It's mostly FM. FM can broadcast a much better quality sound. It sounds better. It can broadcast stereo, which AM can't do. It can broadcast television. Television is actually broadcast on FM. So that was a modern advance. That made radio what it is today for the most part. When it first came out, it wasn't all that popular, but by the time you got to the this era...
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry. Yes, thank you very much. Uh-oh. For the airport, okay. These are portable radios. Portable radios came out, but actually they started out as 2 portable radios. This one's got a camera built into it. One had a camera with your radio. They had little tiny vacuum tubes in them. They ran on big heavy batteries, and they weren't very popular. When the transistor radios came out, like on the bottom shelf here, they were much more popular. So they were lighter, they had smaller batteries, and you could carry them anywhere you wanted, and less expensive also. So that was when radio became something you carried around with you. Before that, radio was something you stuck on a shelf and went and listened to it. Now you can take it where you were going and listen to it where you are.
Oh, that's very interesting.
It was about the same time that rock music started to come out, when transistor radios came out. So now kids could listen to stuff their parents didn't want to listen to. Because you only had one radio at home, you had to listen to what they wanted to listen to. Now you can take it with you and listen to it with your friends and listen to what you want to listen to yourself.
This is like the time you could actually like carry it with you instead of like just looking at it like on a car or something like that, basically.
Right, or plugged into the wall somewhere so you can't take it very far. Exactly. These are ones you could, real portable radios. You can take them anywhere and they work just as well outside as inside or wherever you went.
Okay. So what's in this?
Now we'll go this way. So this is it. This is television. We'll turn this off out here. This is television. Television over there, that's the earliest television in that case there, or the earliest one we have here. This is what's called mechanical television. When television started out, it was not a picture tube. It was this metal wheel you see here, and you see the holes that are punched in it. This would be hooked up to a motor, and behind it you can see this glass bulb back here. That was a light bulb. This wheel would spin around, and the wheel spinning around and the light bulb varying in its brightness would create a tiny little picture which you'd see through that magnifying glass and that tiny little hole there. So you could broadcast a picture through the air using a radio that you could see on something like this. So in the 1920s, early 1930s, if you had a TV set, it looked something like that. This is a kit you would have made. If you wanted to buy one, you could buy one. This is what they look like when you bought them. If you had one in your living room, it would look like this. Now the picture was way back in this hole here, so you couldn't have a whole bunch of people sitting around watching. Only pretty much the person sitting right in front would be able to see it. Because even in this great big set, the picture was probably about that big. That's as big as it could be. Because the size of the picture was based on how big that wheel is. This wheel is one size. The wheel that's inside this box is bigger, but if you wanted a picture even like 6 inches across, you need a wheel about 12 feet around. So you couldn't make a very big picture with these things. Fortunately, that was only around for a few years, and then the picture tubes came out. This is a 1940 TV set when picture tubes were just beginning to become popular. And the picture tube you can see here is mounted vertically, because the picture tube itself is so long, if you tried to put it in a box the way we're used to watching TV, the box would be this big out. So you run it vertically and you watch it through this mirror in the top of the picture. You move this so you can watch the TV show through the mirror. And you can see how complicated this is. There were these 14 steps you had to go through just to watch TV. It was not like flipping a switch and putting it on. All these different steps you had to go through to watch a program. So just like early radio, it was very expensive, very hard to operate, and there wasn't much to see, because in 1940, there were only, even in New York City, there was only like 2 stations. You know, you come out to DC, maybe 1, you come out anywhere else, there'd be nothing at all. So they were very expensive and there wasn't much to see. But just like radio, when people found out how popular this was, TV stations blew, more TV stations, more TV sets, and that's what you see mostly in the rest of this room here. The other TV sets that came out after this one is the first color television set from 1954. The same year transistor radio started, color television started. Color television was not as popular though, because when color television first was available for the home, there were no color television programs on TV. No one was broadcasting color shows because the TV stations didn't want to spend all this money for color television equipment if no one had anything to watch it on. People didn't want to buy a color TV set if there was no color TV shows to watch.
So wasn't it like the 1960s or so it started to transition to the colors?
Exactly right. Yeah, 1960. By 1966, all of the major networks were showing all their new shows in color. But before that, 65, 64, you watch old TV shows now, and you'll see, you know, in the 60s there'll be a TV series that'll be on, the first season will be on black and white, and the second season will be on color, because they developed the technology and they started broadcasting. But you're right, it was 12 years after the invention of color TV before there was actually a lot of color TV programs. So color TV was not popular at all until really the 1970s, when it became less expensive and more people wanted to get it. Before then, you could watch your color TV programs on a black and white TV. It would work, you just couldn't see the color. So you weren't missing anything, so people weren't, it wasn't like there were programs you couldn't watch. So people didn't spend the money for color TV until there were more things to watch on TV. Mm. This is something museum or things I remember. This is what's called a Sony Watchman. This is one of the first portable television sets. It actually had a little picture tube in here that would project onto the screen. So you could watch TV shows. You would tune it just like a radio. You tune this along until a TV picture came on. You'd watch it. Had an antenna that pulled up. These were great if you were going to like a ball game in the 1970s, 1980s when these things came out.
So that's like when it was reaching its peak, people was really starting to buy TVs with colors.
Yeah, well, color TV hasn't really even peaked yet. The sales of TVs are still greater all the time. Because with the flat screen TVs now, let me put it back. If you had a TV set like one of these back in the day, if it broke down, you'd have someone come fix it. If it didn't work, you have a guy come to the house and they would go and fix it, make it work again. With modern TVs, it breaks down, you get a new one, because there's always a better quality one out there, there's always more features, there's always something else you want. So what this is, this shows how it all really began, how radio actually began. This is the beginning of the idea that you can send signals over the air without a wire. In 1888, they discovered that if you create a spark, the spark generates energy that can travel through the air. So if you push down that key there, and look right here, you see a spark, okay? And do it again and push it, and look at this light here. See, the light lights up every time you do that. So what that means is when you push the key, it makes a spark each time you push the key. And that generates electricity that travels through the air without a wire and gets picked up by this loop of wire here as an antenna and shows up as a light bulb here, on the light bulb here. So you're sending a signal through the air without a wire. And that's the beginning of what was called wireless communication. This is when they came up with the idea that you can send stuff through the air without needing a wire. And that led to the development of what we think of as radio, where you broadcast from a single place and everyone can hear it. This stuff here is like sound effect stuff. Old radio programs did a lot of sound effects, but you had to make the sound of. Make horse sounds, you make squeaky door and bell sounds. I mean, all radio programs needed some sort of sound effect. You couldn't actually have a horse or a gunshot or rain in the studio. You had to have ways of making those sounds. In this case here, these are what are called novelty radios. These are sort of modern, cheap plastic radios that show that the technology which you saw upstairs was very expensive, very hard to operate, and required a lot of parts and so forth. Now becomes so simple that they can make plastic toys out of it, and it's the same technology, same radio technology. Some of them were given away free. These gas pump radios were given away by gas stations as advertising. I used to have a few of those when I was a kid. Some radio stations gave away radios that just got their station for advertising purposes. And the rest of these are just toy radios that various companies made either for advertising or to sell, because the idea of a radio, or the technology was so simple that you could throw it together and make it, for a couple dollars, put it in a plastic case and make something you could sell or give away. So it started out upstairs as being the highest tech piece of home entertainment equipment that was expensive and difficult to operate, to being something that's just a toy that people throw in a drawer and forget all about. And it's sort of coming full circle with the technology, going from being a brand new thing to being something that no one cares about much anymore.
So this is basically, is this the last part?
Right, this is basically the last part.